So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I just want to give you a quick background of what Connectable Life is, and that it's a place that no matter what you're feeling, you can come and get the help that you want or need. Connectable Life is an online platform that offers mind, body, and wellness consultations in an easy, safe, and stigma-free environment using a secure built-in video call facility. Our goal is that we can make healthcare a norm for everyone and accessible to anyone. Our hope is to highlight the value of wellness over illness and that there is strength in reaching out for help. Healthy does not simply mean the absence of disease. Healthy means physical health, happiness, and peace. Also, looking after our mental health. To be truly healthy and happy, you need to be intentional about looking after your mind, body, and wellness. We want to help normalize all forms of therapy. Whether you are dealing with stress, anxiety, fear, PTSD, and more, we are here to help you overcome and reach your full, joyful potential. So tonight we are so excited to have Nicola join us. Nicola is one of the educational psychologists on Connectable Life. So if you would like to see her further, please feel free to go and book a consultation. You can even message her asking questions before you book in terms of what her timeline is looking like or anything that she might deal with that you need to ask questions about. Nicola has been involved in the education system as a high school history teacher since 1999 and as an educational psychologist in private practice since 2019. Nicola is currently registered with the Health Professionals Council of South Africa, as well as Health and Care Professions Council in the United Kingdom. She is passionate about working with children and adolescents, and her practice focuses on helping young people manage their environment and relationships with themselves, their family, and peers. Nicola provides further support in career and subject choice assessments, therapy in areas of anxiety, depression, and relationships, family, etc. She helps provide learning support, study skills, time management, and organizational skills, as well as working with learners with special needs and a range. She helps all ages, from the ages of 4 to the ages of 18. So no matter what you are dealing with, Nicola should be your first point of contact. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nicola. On to you.
Thank you very much. It's really awesome to be here and to provide a presentation around helping young people make hopefully appropriate subject choices. I'm just going to share my screen and where is it? Slideshow from beginning. If you can just let me know that you can see it from your side. Is that everyone can see that? Perfect. Okay, so I think subject choice is a very important part of a young person's journey, especially in grade 9, because they are put into this position of having to choose the right subjects going forward into grade 10 and going on. And I think it can be such a stressful time because all of a sudden these young people who are 14 or 15 years old are kind of feeling like they have to decide the rest of their lives. And that can be quite an overwhelming feeling. So I think for me, what's very important about the subject choice process is making decisions based on being informed and having the right information available to make those informed decisions. So in terms of what I'll be covering today is looking at what do you have to be thinking about when you're choosing subjects because it has an impact on your matric. Thinking about your university requirements, and then thinking about the process of actually making subject choices. The reason why matric requirements are important is because that's the end. That's what you need to, that's the subjects that you need to have to be able to get into the subject or career choice that you're interested in. And your getting into university is based on what you're getting in matric. So those are quite important things to be thinking about at this stage, even though it can be a bit of a scary sort of process of wanting to think about that. So your work is going to fill a large part of life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking, don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. So I think for me, anytime we're talking about career choices, subject choices, it really has to be around what are you passionate about. You know, I think in my generation, a lot of people were advised to go into careers that were all about money. You know, what job can you get that's going to make you have a lot of money so that you can be financially independent, etc. And that's an absolutely valid thing to be thinking about. But in terms of today, work is a lot about what do you enjoy, because you're going to be spending most of your time in that environment. So going into a career that you are passionate about is where you're actually going to be finding the money. If you're passionate about it and you want to be successful, you're going to be able to be financially independent in that career. So passion and love for me is something that you really need to be thinking about when we're thinking about careers and subject choice. So one day Alice came to a fork in the road and saw a Cheshire cat in a tree. "Which road do I take?" she asked. His response was a question. "Where do you want to go?" "I don't know," Alice said. Then said the cat, "It doesn't matter." So if you don't have a sense of where it is you want to go, then you're not going to be making appropriate subject choices. So in order to help you sort of guide that pathway that you are interested in, this is part of the conversation from today. So matric requirements. So there are 3 possible national statement curriculum passes. You have a higher certificate, you have a diploma, and you have a bachelor's pass. So in terms of the higher certificate, you have to obtain at least 40% in your home language. So whether you're learning in Afrikaans or English, whatever your home language is, you need to obtain 40% in 2 other subjects and at least 30% in the other 4 subjects. And you have to pass at least 6 out of your 7 subjects. Diploma, you need an achievement rating of 3, 40 to 49% or better in 4 of your subjects, and a minimum of 30% in your language of learning and teaching subject. So that would typically sort of be English or Afrikaans or Zulu, depending on what school you're going to. For a bachelor's pass, you need a rating of 4, 50 to 59% in or better in 4 of your recognized NSC subjects, and a minimum of 30% in your language of learning and teaching subject. So again, English or Afrikaans. In order to get into university, and that is not the only option available, there are technicons that you can get into, there's diplomas that can be completed, but in order to get into a university, just as a part of an application to open that door, you have to have a bachelor's pass. So you would still pass your matric if you have a higher certificate or a diploma, but that's not going to even get you knocking on the door for university. So if your child is in a position where university is on the table, then they've got to be working towards a bachelor's pass. Okay. So to ensure a bachelor's pass, you need to achieve enough D's in your subject set. So a grade 12 subject, you're going to write exams in 7 subjects. Of those, maths or maths literacy, English and Afrikaans, and then English as your home language, Afrikaans as your second additional language, and then your other subjects, with other also being compulsory. In that set, you need your Ds of at least 4. Remember that a bachelor's pass does not guarantee entrance into the university. So you might have the bachelor's pass, but every degree and every faculty in university, again, has their own requirements. That bachelor's pass is just you knocking on the door. you have to then meet the requirements of university to be able to actually get into whatever degrees you're interested in. Okay, and that is based on the university's academic point system, and every university kind of has its own system at this stage. So other requirements for university, in most cases, you need to be getting 50% or above in mathematics, especially if you're thinking of degrees that are sort of your BScs, your engineering, where in actual fact you need to be getting a higher than 50% in maths, but you know 50% is kind of you knocking on the door. If you are in a school where they're offering maths literacy, then if your child is at a point where maths is just clearly not their subject, no matter how much effort they're putting in, it's just not a subject that they're getting a good mark in, then possibly your school's going to come to you and say, okay, you know what, your child is very anxious, you know, there's so much pressure around the maths, we really think it's best if they maybe go to maths literacy. Now, I think there's a misconception in the world that if you have maths literacy, you can't get into university, and that's not true. There are a lot of degrees out there where you can get into degrees with a math literacy as a mark. So by going into maths literacy, you're not closing the door to university. If you have physical science as a subject, if that is a subject that you are wanting your child to choose or to have in their subject set, they have to have mathematics. So you can't have physical science and mathematical literacy. So if at some point in the future, the problem with that is that if maths becomes a subject that's an area of concern and your child also has science and your school comes to you and says, okay, we think your child needs to change to maths literacy, then they might have to then also change physical, well, they will have to change physical science. So you've got to be quite careful in year 9 or grade 9 when you're choosing subjects to make sure that if it's physical science is a subject that you want your child to take, that maths is in a very solid place. Because if that crashes in the future, then they might have to end up changing or swapping 2 subjects. And there are rules around that as well. You have a limited amount of times that you can change a subject from year 10 or grade 10 to grade 12. Science is one of those subjects that is a requirement for certain university degrees, especially BSc, some universities for your medical degrees, engineering. And when you do physical science, most of those degrees that have physical science as a requirement need you to be getting physical science with 60% or above. So again, if physical science is not an area of strength, it might not be a subject that's worth taking or considering going forward. Okay, your language of learning and teaching, your sort of English, Afrikaans, etc. Almost all degrees require a minimum of 50%. I know, for example, with the UCT, they also require that your child be getting 50% or more in life orientation. And if your child is getting less than that, they might actually not accept your child into that degree because their life orientation mark isn't above 50%. So even though life orientation isn't a subject you can choose, and in most cases children see it as a sort of a waste of a subject, there can be consequences if a child is failing LO that it might impact in some universities on their ability to get into that degree. But not all the universities have that requirement. In all instances, any mark below a D symbol earns very few and sometimes no academic points. So I know I'm emphasizing marks here, but that's in terms of university entrance. You can still get a grade 12 pass with a higher certificate or diploma. It just means your child will not be able to get into university. Okay. So in summary, the marks attained by a student is the most important consideration for getting to university. And this can affect your bachelor pass and your AP points to get you into university. Low marks in matric in high status subjects actually have little value, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at a later stage. Rather select subjects where you are going to do well and receive higher points in. So, you know, again, for example, if you are wanting to take physical science, but right now in grade 9, you are getting 40%, you have to understand that that subject might be a subject that you're potentially not going to be doing well in going forward. And that's going to impact the points you have to get into your degrees of choice. So it is something to just sort of keep in mind. Okay, so South African university requirements. So every university has an AP score point, and they kind of work it on, so for example, if your child gets 80% and above, they get 7 points. If they get, 70 to 79, that's 6 points, and so it goes down. In most cases, if they are getting 3 points, which is 40 to 49%, then you either getting no points or only 3 points. So the higher you get, the better the mark, the better the chance of getting higher points, and that's what gets you into university. So if you go into a university webpage, they talk about, say for example, medicine, you need at WITS, you need 42 points. And how they get to that 42 points is then based on the marks. So if your child gets an A, they get 7 points. If they get a 5, they get 6 points. And so it adds up to that amount to get into university. They only look at your top 6 subjects. So they exclude LO as part of that points. And then depending on the university, your AP subjects, so your I can't remember what's the AP stand for? Your additional, I can't remember. Oh, that's bad. But those extra subjects that you take in English and maths and science that are additional. So these are subjects that are typically done after school, and they are sort of at a higher level to what you would normally do in English or normally would do in maths. You still have to do maths and you still have to do English, but AP English and AP maths would be an extra subject. And some universities actually give you credit for that. It is better to achieve higher marks than to have lots of additional subjects. So my previous job, which was at Crawford in Sandton, there was a big trend with our students at the time to take additional subjects. So we would have students who would take 10, 11 subjects, whereas you only need 7 subjects to actually get your grade 12. So what would happen then is the child would be spread too thin. And so they would be getting less marks in all their subjects, but have all these subjects on their plate. Whereas if they had the minimum 7, chances are they would be getting better marks. So sometimes it's better just to stick to the 7 and make sure that you're getting the best marks possible. Once you have satisfied bachelor's criteria, you should focus on accumulating the highest AP best points. So if you are meeting that minimum requirement for a bachelor's pass of your 4Ds, etc. Once you've got that level, then start working on improving the marks so that you can get as high points as possible for your APS scores. So for example, an A in Maths Lit, which is worth 7 points, has more value than an E in Maths, which is 3 points, and does not contribute to bachelor's pass, nor does it meet the minimum requirement for numeric degrees. So what we're talking about, or what I'm talking about there, is if your child is struggling in maths, it's very important to you that your child continue with maths because, you know, historically speaking, maths is such an important subject, or, you know, your feeling is your child is failing because, you know, they're not doing so well in maths and Maths Lit is a lower subject. The reality is if they're getting 40% in maths, they're not going to get into the university degree. They can't get into any finance degrees. They won't be able to get into any sort of business degrees or marketing degrees because the maths was too low. Whereas if your child has an A in Maths Lit, they at least have the opportunity to get into some degrees. You know, there are some extended programs where they could get into for accounting and such, but that's only because they're meeting the points. So you get more points in maths lit if you're doing better than if you were doing in maths and not doing so well. So it's just something to consider as you start making these choices. So some things to remember. Achieving the minimum APS score is no guarantee of admission. So going to university is very competitive. So I'll give an example for medicine. So there's probably around 70, no, maybe too hard, maybe 50,000 people that apply for medicine, but every university has a very limited amount of space for those children. So for BITS, for example, they only have 250 places. You know, UP is the same, UCT is the same. So it's a very competitive degree. And even though you might meet the minimum requirements to get into medicine, because the competition is so sort of, you know, hectic, you have to be getting sort of a 90% average to be able to get into that degree. So I'll give you another scenario that I had with a child where a child was given provisional acceptance based on her grade 12 marks into university. But remember that acceptance is based on your final grade 12 mark that you get in January. So she got provisional acceptance, so she met the minimum requirement, she wrote the exams, etc., got her marks back in January, and then she wasn't accepted. And the reason she wasn't accepted is because the cohort that was writing that year just got better marks. So even though she met the minimum, because the cohort got better and universities are going to take the strongest students, she unfortunately wasn't able to be accepted. So it's just something to have in the back of your mind. So meeting the minimum mark criteria is important, and in many cases you kind of got to also just do a little bit better. Most degrees requiring maths require C as an absolute minimum. So if you right now your child's in grade 9 and they're already only getting 35% or they're only getting 40%, you need to seriously consider, is it worth the anxiety and stress that you're going to be putting your child under to get them to that C mark? And, you know, maybe you want to give it a try for grade 10, not a problem, you know, but understand that it's going to take a lot of work and how much effort both you and your child are going to have to put in to be able to get that mark improved and go forward. So it's also about dedication, commitment, and those kind of things. In fact, a mark below a D in a language of learning, maths, physical science has no value at university, and a higher mark in another subject has more value. Check you have the right subjects at the right achievement level for your specialist degrees. So if you're thinking medicine, you're thinking engineering, you know, you need to make sure that you're meeting those minimum requirements as you go forward in your final academic high school career. So for instance, some courses or degrees have specific matric requirements. You know, for example, your BSc, BComs and numeric degrees all require mathematics at a minimum of a B or a C. Science, for your BSc degrees, medicine, engineering, etc., you need a minimum of a B or C. And then there are some universities where you can get into medicine without actually having life science as well. You can have science and or life science. Whereas, for example, University of Free State, you have to have science and life science. So again, that's why it's important to do the research. Okay. So life science isn't obligatory, but it is useful for medicine at most faculties. At certain universities, AP Maths will get you points. Some specialist subjects are not required at school level. So this is always such a hard topic, because I speak to the accounting teacher and she's like, how can you say that they don't need accounting to do a financial degree? And you don't. You know, you don't need accounting. Will it help? 100%. But it's not a subject you actually have to do a financial degree. So what's more important is the points. Same with art. You don't actually have to have done art as a subject to go into a fine arts degree. Will it help? 100%, but it's not a requirement. And some faculties require portfolios. So in art, you might need to submit a portfolio. If you're doing a drama degree, you might have to do, you know, something on stage. If you're doing a music degree, you might need to do a performance on the piano, for example. Other attributes such as leadership, community service, extramurals, etc., can be an advantage. However, when it comes to South African universities, a lot of it is just based on marks, and if you meet those minimum requirements. Another thing that's coming through a lot now is your national benchmark test. Many of your universities are seeing this as a requirement. You can only write them in grade 12. I recommend that you write them sort of June-ish and onwards, so that your child would have gone through the whole syllabus already. In some faculties, they require the NBTs, and you're allowed to write them twice, and then they'll take the higher mark. So your national benchmarking tests are something that you really need to be considering when you go into sort of university and whatever degrees you're interested in. Okay, so here is a diagram just around your mathematics versus math literacy. So as you can see, there are several degree paths that are available to a child who is doing mathematical literacy. As long as they are meeting the minimum requirements in terms of marks and points, and they are interested in some of these degrees, they are absolutely able to go to university with maths literacy. So never ever think that maths literacy is a subject that closes doors. It's not. It is something that you can go to university with. Obviously, several degrees are available in terms of your mathematics, your subjects like health science, your engineerings, you know, all of those are, you have to have. So maths opens every door as long as you're meeting the minimum requirements in terms of marks. Science opens some doors depending on the degree, and maths literacy you are able to go to university. It is important to keep those sort of kind of things in mind as well. Okay, so what to think about when choosing your subject. So a lot of what we've spoken about now is a lot more factual things to be considering once you've sort of gone into grade 10 and what are the steps now. But I think understanding what you're working towards is important in terms of what kind of choices you're making now. So when you are thinking about making subject choices, I think these questions are quite important. So what are your child's interests? What subjects fit your child's personality? And what is your child capable of? So your child's interests are important. Are they interested in sport? Do they love music? Do they love acting? Are they in your face kind of people, or are they reserved? Do they have a passion for numbers? You know, do they prefer to work alone? So all of those kind of things are sort of important things to consider in terms of careers going forward. So, you know, you might have a child that loves the thought of an office. I remember in grade 12 having a vision of myself being a chartered accountant in a red suit with a briefcase and high heels. Not that I wear high heels now. And that was my vision. That's what I thought I wanted. Luckily, that was so not happened because my career worked out perfectly for me. So sometimes our children's ideas are influenced by Grey's Anatomy and Suits and, you know, all these programs that they see on TV, which are not real. And so having that conversation around what's real, what is expected, are quite important things to be having with your child. You know, if your child is a big personality, you know, would being a chartered accountant really be the right career if they're going to be in an office all the time? Would they not be better working with people in marketing or human resources? So personality is quite an influential element in terms of helping your child choose a career. And then ability, you know, so if your child right now is getting 35% in science, but science is such an important subject, or you view science as such an important subject, is that a subject worth for your child to take, keeping in mind that they need the best points possible to get into university? So I think a lot of times I sort of view it as, well, is it about the degree or is it about being able to get into university? So if it's about the degree, then they need to be getting certain marks. If it's about getting into university and having options available, then at least we don't have to stick to science. We just have to say whatever's necessary to get into university, and maybe taking computer applications technology instead of IT, or taking a subject like hospitality or tourism, which are more practical, but those points count exactly the same as science, as English, as so no subject counts less just because of how society perceives it. So this is important to kind of keep that in mind as well. Okay, so in terms of some sort of steps to think about, figure out what your child's interested in, help them to get to know themselves. So are they people, persons, do they love people? Are there people that prefer to be alone and get their energy from being isolated and having a read rather than big party people? Are they able to stand up for themselves, or are they a little bit reserved? Those kind of things are sort of conversations to have with your child as well. Explore career opportunities. So when you're choosing subjects now, I'm not saying you have to know what career you want. I'm saying you might want to have a sense and keep your options as open as possible. So if possibly medicine is on the table or engineering is on the table and you're getting a good mark in science, like 60%, then keep the science, keep your options open. If you already know right now that I'm definitely doing drama and I'm very interested in the arts, then maybe you want to take design or visual art or, EGD, whatever, those kind of subjects. But just keep your options as open as possible. Decide between mathematics and mathematical literacy, and then help your child choose subjects responsibly. So just sort of things to remember: make responsible choices, chat to your teachers and parents, choose subjects to provide you access to various job opportunities. So don't fixate. Try and keep it as broad as possible, keeping in mind that subjects like geography, history, accounting, business studies, computer applications, technology, IT, all of those subjects count the same in terms of points. So, having one subject that your child really is passionate about, even though you might be a little bit reserved about it, might actually keep your child motivated and happy. Which will allow them to then get through school in a much more positive space, which will then help them get better marks. So I'll give you an example with my son. So my son is in year 10 here in the UK, and we had to do subject choices sort of last year. And it's a little bit different here in the UK, but we had to choose 3 subjects. So computer technology, which is the same as ICT, was on the table, and German was on the table. And then completely out of left wing, he comes to me with this design technology subject. I'm like, what? And it's all about sawing things and metal work and designing structures and things like that. And I thought that was completely out of his experience. And it's the subject he loves the most so far. So we've also, as parents, got to listen to our child's voice. What are they telling us? We are not always the experts in their lives. And so listen to them, hear them, give them advice, but also support them as much as possible. We don't want them to just choose subjects because they're lazy. We want to guide them, but we also need to hear what they're saying as well. Take note of admission requirements for courses at different institutions. Be careful of choosing subjects purely dependent on what you're good at. Sometimes we've also got to push ourselves and choose a subject we're not so good at, so that we can get into that degree that we're interested in. Be careful of choosing subjects based on who will be teaching you the subject next year. So a lot of times we would have students who would say, I chose history because I knew Mrs. Pereira was going to teach me. And then I don't teach year 10. And then they hate the subject, So don't choose subjects based on the teacher. Choose subjects because it's going to help you get into the career that you're interested in. And then really encourage your children to not choose subjects based on the subjects their friends are taking. because this is their journey and not their friend's journey. So, you know, sometimes friendships are really close and the one is going to do design. Your child's not really good at design, but are they going to do design because, you know, Poppy is in science or design? Okay, so just they need to be making subject choices based on what for them, not for their friends. Okay, so keep the following in mind. Figure out what makes your child happy. Help your child to learn what their strengths are. Stay calm and do the research. It can be a very overwhelming process, especially when your child's in grade 9 and granny's asking, what subjects are you taking? And uncle's asking, you know, what career are you going through? Then it's the teachers bringing it up in class. So it can be quite an overwhelming, scary process. So just stay calm, support your child, have the conversations, do the research, and then you can be making informed decisions. Remember that this is your child's future and not yours. So you are not your child and your child is not an extension of you. And so maybe I wanted to be a ballerina. I can't force my son to be a ballerina. So you need to let your child be autonomous and independent, but supporting them through that journey. And then consider something which I feel is quite important, which is job shadowing. So let me just change the, oh, no, too late, go backwards. So I had a young student who was one of those top students. She had science, she had the maths, she was getting the marks to get into medicine. Her dad was a doctor, her mom was a nurse, and she went and did job shadowing at a hospital and went into a surgery. And she walked out of that knowing she will never, ever be a doctor, because it was not an experience that she was comfortable with and it did not fit her personality. She ended up being an English high school teacher. So job shadowing is a very good opportunity for your child to experience what it means to be in that career, and if that is something that they are potentially going to be good at. Is it something that they're interested in? Because I think, as I said earlier, Grey's Anatomy, Suits, they all give us this idea of what a potential career is like, but once you go into a job shadowing experience, it actually shatters a lot of those views, and which I think is good, because we want your child to choose a career based on reality, and that will then guide their subject choice. So here are some sort of questions. Does what I want to study require me to take subjects I don't enjoy? Am I willing to work hard in those subjects to get to my end goal? What subjects am I good at, even if I don't necessarily enjoy them? Do I enjoy it but find it hard? Can I get extra lessons? Which subjects are my strengths? So these are really nice sort of guiding questions to sort of help you in your child's thinking. You know, am I happy with my decision? So as much as it's the decision making is the hard part. Once the decision is made, I think there's a lot of relief in that process. So I think these are really good questions to maybe take into consideration when you're working with your child and talking to them about this. And then almost done. So what are some things that you can do? So you could speak to a career counselor. Normally there is somebody within the school environment that your child can approach to have a conversation around these kinds of topics. You know, sometimes they need to hear somebody's perspective that isn't their parents. They just need to get somebody else's perspective to help them with that decision-making process. And there's no harm in that. Obviously job shadowing, which I think is invaluable. You could speak to somebody in the profession that your child's interested in. So if they're interested in law, you know, maybe go to a lawyer who's a friend, or you know of somebody, a colleague, and get your child to maybe have a conversation with them. You can go to these websites, www.gostudy.net, www.skillsacademy.co.za, and then www.careerplanet. They've got some really interesting information that you can access. Inquire about the requirements, what the requirements are needed for the courses your child is interested in. So if they're interested in medicine, what do they need to be getting? to get into medicine, because that is a journey from grade 10 to grade 12. It's not something you can just suddenly pull out the bag in grade 12. It's something that has to be sort of put in place as a plan from grade 10. So if that is something that your child's thinking about, you need to be sort of thinking about those kind of consequences or planning ahead for that. It is possible for a subject choice or career assessment to be done with an educational psychologist or psychometrist if you really want to know about your child's interests, personality, ability, because those are sort of done under test conditions and provide a sort of good idea of sort of things to be thinking about. So it is something that you can sort of consider going forward. And just a thought to take away with you: 3 greatest predictors of success: play, passion, and purpose. So it has to be something that you can have fun in. It must be something that you can be passionate about and potentially give you purpose in your life. So it's just something to consider. And thank you for your time. There's my email address if you're interested in contacting me, or you can get through to me on Connectable Life. And any questions?
Oh, thanks, Nicola. That was so great and super informative. I think every time I had a question pop into my mind, the next second you answered it. So it was, it really was like that. It was amazing. I love that you put so much emphasis on knowing the child and nurturing the child for who they are. I know in my teaching years, we saw so often that parents, I don't want to use the word forced, but lightly forced their kids to do certain subjects or follow certain careers because it was maybe an unfulfilled dream of their own, or the perceived idea of what's right or what's meant to be. And it only led them to failing, not just failing the subject, but failing the year and not even getting a matric at all because they're on the wrong subject choice path, career path. So we really, not only are we adding so much stress and anxiety and pressure to our kids if we don't have them in the correct subject choices, but we setting them up for failure rather than setting them up for success. So I really, really love that. And the fact that there's so much research, we don't realize how much you need to actually research before making these decisions. If you're somebody who is very specific about not only going to university, but going to a specific one, you need to know specific to that university. Okay, my dream is to go to UCT and to study accounting. This is what I need to go there and do that. And to make sure you achieve the correct results to do that, because I think very often we sort of get the marks we get and then based off that make decisions about what to study and where to go. So if you do have a very clear idea of where you want to go and what you want to do, then the research is really, really important. Oh, I love that you make sort of success synonymous with passion and purpose, because I think that's where we sort of later on in life fall into these sort of dips of unhappiness. Because I always used to say to learners, if you don't enjoy going to school, that's 12 years of your life or whatever it is. Now a career is 50 plus years of your life. So imagine waking up and going to a place that you dislike and doing something that you don't enjoy for 50 plus years. So rather take the time to really figure out who you are and what it is you want to do so that you don't have that later on. And I think sometimes we also forget that we're allowed to change our minds. There's so much stress and pressure to know exactly who you are and what you want to do. And we change, life changes, and that's okay too. But Nicola, I've got I just thought of one thing to possibly ask you. So I think, and rightly so, things are changing a little bit in the sense that when we were at school, we were kind of told, you go to school, you get your matric certificate, you're going to go to university, you graduate in something and you move into the working world, and that's sort of how it goes. And I think it's becoming more and more spoken about that there's other avenues, there's other options. University is not the only way to go. It's not the only option. I know tonight was very driven on subject choice and therefore those that are aiming towards university. But what would you say to those that aren't necessarily university driven or academically inclined? What sort of message or something that you could give to them or say to them?
So I think for me, university isn't for everyone, and that's okay. I've had many students who, was probably not a good thing to say, but who didn't actually finish matric. They left school in grade 11 and they have become massively successful. So I think it's you can't assume that university is the only way to be successful in life. And I think that's not true. I think that it all comes down to what are you passionate about? Where do you find your joy? And those can be turned into things that can make you successful. You know, so if you are interested in a very specific type of career, law, medicine, engineer, you know, then psychologist, then there's a very specific group that you have to take. But even if you don't know what you want to do, gap years are always awesome, where you can go into a gap year, go find yourself, and then decide what it is that you want to do in life. So I think for me, to be successful in a career has a lot to do with determination, wanting to do the hard work, and passion.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, it was so lovely.
It was. Thank you so much, Nicola.